So, a lot of people have understandably been upset about the prestige system, and after the videos I did yesterday, I didn't necessarily want to come out with another video right away, especially given that my playtime for this game has been atrocious due to internet issues and stability. But one thing I wanted to cover with the game has to do with nobody's really presented any ideas for how to fix the prestige system other than they need to nerf it. And I don't think they're addressing the major issue. So let me cover the Demon side real quick. Some of my changes, alright? Let's pick Warlord. Warlord is probably the killer I have the most time on and the killer I have the most experience with. The number one complaint that I see people have is the fact that the prestige system is very unfair, and most of this comes from the survivor element. Now, I agree that the challenge system is unfair. For one thing is they put two caveats in place for a prestige system. Now, there's 5 prestiges, which is perfectly fine in my opinion. All of these prestiges are necessary if for longevity. But the game really thinks itself is going to be a much longer game than it actually is if it thinks that players are going to grind through this. So you have to look. Most people already had their accounts leveled up at the maximum for whatever character they were going to prestige. So understandably, a lot of people were sitting on spirit points. I, for obvious reasons, do not have those spirit points. I literally just finished leveling Mia and David within the past 2 weeks. I still have to do the Blacksmith and the Plaguebringer. So understandably, I personally do not have those points to spend. And the game's going to be coming out free as a free game on the Epic Games Store. The game really is in a bad place for new players, because everybody that was a max level character, I know COD is one of the few killer demon mains I actually respect, who I believe it has the Prestige 5 Warlord. This is going to be a utterly significant, utterly broken change if you were to go up against him, having that advantage. Now, I'll discuss that in a minute. The main issue is the rewards are not strong enough for the cost. So the issue, in my opinion, is quite simple. You either leave the inherently grindy bullshit of these challenges, because you have to look. So we're going to ask you to skip each challenge, right? Let's say, because some of these are fairly easy. Winning 33 matches, that's pretty easy to do if you're a good demon. Dealing $1 million and change, that's pretty easy to do as a demon. As a good demon, you're averaging 40 to 50k damage a game against survivors. So if you looked at you have to win 33 matches and you're averaging 50k a game, that means you're going to get those numbers up relatively quickly. And that's just on your wins, that's not including your losses. Demonic Dash. Let's say I want to skip the Demonic Dashes or the killing survivors. I think the Dashers is probably easier to do. So I want to skip the Dashes. Well, that's 140k, and I'm going to round that up. 140k for each of those 3 subsections. That means that is an absurd amount just to skip one challenge. Now, let's say you have the spirit points and you skip all of these challenges right here. Okay, perfectly fine. What do you get? You get your insignia, which is meh. And then you get 1 extra skill point, but you don't get access to that skill point until you hit level 46. So essentially you have to spend another close to 1 million blood points getting your character up again, not to level 45, but to level 46. And in addition to that, every time you prestige, the spirit point cost per level goes up. And you get a slight buff on really bad influence, which at the end of the day, if you're already good on Warlord, you don't need that buff. Same thing, if you're really good on Warlord, you don't need that buff. None of the changes that they implemented as rewards are significant enough for the grind, particularly with the cost going up. I'll use the Blacksmith as an example, because he's the survivor I don't have upgrade. Right now, he is at level 11, it costs 9,000 spirit points to level him up. And once I hit level 21, that cost jumps up to, I believe it's 21,000. Alright? Now, once I go to Prestige 2 on him, the cost of this level 11 jumps, goes to 11,000. At Prestige 3, it's 13,000. Prestige 4 is 15,000. Just at the level 11 that my blacksmith is currently at now. So it costs more and more spirit points to level up. And in addition to that, what are you really getting? Your first prestige gives you your insignia, which is relatively mediocre. You get your extra skill point, which again, you don't get access to until you spend all your spirit points and get him up to the level 26. And you get a minor buff to Rough and Ready. A minor buff. Every single thing that they put in this patch, they implemented the system without any real plan in place. So what are the ideas to fix it? Obviously, the best example I can give you, now the developers gave us use Leader Ash as the example, so let's go to Leader Ash. Obviously, if they want to tie gameplay bonuses specifically to your tree, there's a couple of options I can think of. So, first off, let's look at if they want to leave the rewards the same, they massively need to drop this. Let's use Ash as an example. I think these are relatively fine. In my opinion, I would take out the winning matches or completing matches one, and I would put something else there instead. Leaders are supposed to play around fear, so instead of this winning matches type thing, you could have a thing of lighting a certain amount of fire sources. I would keep the number somewhere around 100. Let's say light 100 light sources. You can carry 3 matches a game. Matches are relatively common. You know, I normally I can use matches anywhere from 0 to 5 times a game. It could be the sort of thing where if I have nothing else to do and I got 3 matches, I'll just walk up and light a match. Something like that. You could put 100 matches. Now, perform 660 finishers. Well, how would you tone that down? Let's tone that down by a third. Let's say 250 finishers. That sounds reasonable. Headshots. Perform 380 headshots. Now, I don't necessarily like this. I would have preferred something tied to his aura instead, like survivors in your aura deal X amount of damage. Would have made more sense. They should have been tied more to your abilities as opposed to individually, like, you performing it. You're a leader. You buff other teammates. So they could have had something for Ash being survivors in your aura dealing X amount of damage, meaning you need to play with your team instead of running off. You know, you could have had collect 50 pages of a map. Now you get 3 of those per game, so, you know, if you do the math on that, that's not that many games, especially if you are grinding from 1 to 25. These objectives needed to get toned in. Now, let's say you don't like that system. It's too cheap, too easy to do. Okay, fine. Keep your absurdly high challenge numbers, but let them carry over. So as an example, Prestige level 1, you have your spend X amount of seconds on objective, win X amount of matches, perform X amount of finishers, perform X amount of headshots. At Prestige 2, your finishers would carry over, your winning matches would have carried over from the completion, your objective points would have carried over. Anything that you would have directly had over here would have carried over to here. You should be able to work on all of these challenges at the same time. In my opinion, they should carry over instead of that. Because Warrior is probably the greatest example of this. Right? Now, Warriors are supposed to be the second highest damage dealing class. So your first challenge is to deal 1.6 million in damage. Believe it or not, that's not as hard as most people are thinking. You can get that with enough playing time. Maybe not the grind from level 1 to 25, but you can get that. The very next prestige is 2.1 million. So you now need another 500,000 damage in order to prestige. Not 500,000 more, 500,000 more from what you previously had earned. So, if it took, let's say it takes you a week or two of playing nothing but this character, and you get the 1.6 million in damage. When you go to Prestige, Now you have another 500,000. So let's say that adds another 2, maybe 3 days. Then the next tier is 2.3 million. So from your previous time, let's say that was 10 days to get this one done, you have another 200,000. Okay, let's say that's a day, or let's say that's a day. Now it's going to take you 11 days to get this one done. Already, we're almost at a month to get to Prestige 3 just off that one challenge. Then this one is 2.9 million. That's another 600,000. That's another 3 to 4 days right there. So now you're looking at, just for this one Prestige, you're looking at roughly 14 days. This is 3.8 million. That's another 900,000. Let's say that's another 6 days right there. So this one alone is going to take you 21 days. And remember, this is just a hypothetical scenario where you're getting in and you're playing Army of Darkness every single game and you are doing the optimum amount of damage, right? This is if you're a career streamer. Because these challenges don't carry over with one another, this grind is excessive. And for every single character, your reward is simply an extra skill point that you do not get access to until basically the end of your prestige leveling. That's an incredibly minor buff in most cases to your regular abilities. And you get a unique streamer, which is relatively mediocre, and an insignia, which is relatively mediocre. So the two ways to me to change this system, like I said, make these cumulative if you want to keep them high. Even if you want to keep them high, I still think they need to be toned down quite a significant degree. Now, the reasoning why they're not going to let you keep them as high, or why they're so high, is because you can use spirit points to skip them. So they don't want it to be a cumulative thing if you can use the spirit points to skip it. Because essentially, you know, if I were to spend the 100k, well, it'd be 300k. If I spend 300k to skip this whole challenge, and then I go to this one right here, and I have all those seconds carried over, then that's less spirit points I would have to spend on this tier. But to be honest, 300,000 skill points is a lot of skill points to earn. So, yeah, I think I should be allowed to carry that over. So aside from actually changing the challenges themselves and the grindiness of them, let's talk about the rewards. Let's do the flip side. How do you make the rewards better? Because we have received nothing cosmetically here, outside of a screamer. And some of these characters do not have any cosmetics. If you look, the Necromancer has one outfit. The Warlord has one outfit. Puppeteer and Plaguebringer have nothing. Look at your survivors. Now, Leader Ash has one, but you get that from completing Mission 2, which is by far the easiest mission of the set. Annie has one DLC. Arthur has two, both DLC. Ash has, is it 4 or 5? I think it's 4. Yeah. Oh no, it's 5. So he has 4 DLC outfits. Scotty has 1 DLC outfit. Henry has 2 DLC outfits. Mia has a DLC outfit that you get with her DLC, so I'm not really going to count that. Hunter Ash, I'm not counting the Savini. Hunter Ash has 1, plus the Savini. I think there's a second Savini one coming out. Ed has 1. Kelly's got nothing. Amanda's got nothing. Pablo's got nothing. David's got nothing. Blacksmith's got nothing. Cheryl has 1, and Ash has 1, that are both DLCs. There's nothing in the way of cosmetics outside of the Army of Darkness. Now that could be a licensing issue. The studio's playing ball, and none of the other ones really are. You know, the OG characters each have 1. The Evil Dead 1 character, or Evil Dead 2 characters all have 1. But there's no costumes for anybody from the TV show. So maybe Lion Gate and Stars aren't playing ball. I'm not here to question that. And that would also make sense on Puppeteer, given that Puppeteer is their killer, so to speak. But they could have done something a bit more unique for these characters. Let's look at Puppeteer as an example. You know, they could have added some customization options to the army page right here. You didn't know you have the show character feature, and you can cycle through the various characters, the different versions of each character you can get. They should have had the ability to filter characters, like as a prestige reward. Let's say you like this particular berserker. You could have selected this as your primary berserker. All your berserkers look like this. Another example that I'll credit to, I believe it was Pixels, that he commented on this, is that there could have been a prestige reward as a Deadite skin. All of the characters have a Deadite skin when they get possessed. Now I understand why that's not in place. That would definitely confuse newer survivors, or even survivors that really aren't paying attention to the bar on screen saying, hey, they're possessed. So, not necessarily a great idea doing the possessed thing, but there's a lot of really simple cosmetic type of DLC I think they could have implemented, besides just a relatively shitty emblem and a relatively shitty screamer that you don't get to benefit from. The screamer you equip, the demon sees, not you. The one that the demon equips, you see, not them. So if you're a main on a character, the one cosmetic change that you do get besides your insignia, you don't get to see. So obviously having some unique skins. Now I know they didn't want to rip off Dead by Daylight by having, you know, like a bloody type of cosmetic, but they could have given you some interesting changes. So going back to Leader Ash as a great example, right? Leader Ash, I've seen people talk about, like, you could have different finishers, you could have a unique weapon. To me, a decent prestige reward, you could have made this a level 4 or a level 5 prestige reward, would be a unique weapon. So every character, so to speak, is holding a weapon in their profile. Like, every survivor has a weapon in their animation. You could have made a unique version of that weapon that only that survivor can equip in a game. Like, when you spawn into a game, it'll be highlighted on your map. There'll be like a little star icon or something that only you can go and pick up as your prestige reward. And it would be a better version of your legendary weapon. Maybe it was something that only pops up if you complete something in a game, or the first time you open a legendary chest, you get that weapon as your reward. Because a lot of characters have it. You know, obviously you have weapon masteries. So you have the nail gun for David, the machete for Mia, the pistol for Amanda, meat hammer for Kelly, all the crossbows for Ed. So to me, for Ed, I would have maybe given him like you picked one crossbow and said, hey, this is going to be your unique crossbow. The double barrel for Hunter Ash, the chainsaw for Warrior Ash, the lumberjack axe, the sword for Arthur. And even if you look, Ash starts with the chainsaw. He could have had his own version of the chainsaw that was maybe different. Whereas Warrior Ash gets a faster attack speed, faster damage, or more damage one. And Leader Ash gets a balance bar and dismemberment chainsaw, where there's no damage buff on it, but it's much better for those. Same thing if you look at Annie. Annie plays around guns more. She doesn't have a weapon on this screen. Give her something like a revolver or a hunting rifle. Right? That kind of fits for her. Henry. Henry has been seen holding a shovel and a sledge and a mace, depending on which outfit you wear him on. So you could have easily picked the shovel. The blacksmith has a mace that he holds on his profile screen, so that's why I would rather give him the mace over giving it to Henry, even though Henry can hold it. Pablo's another great example. Look at Pablo on screen. Pablo's holding a revolver. Give him a custom revolver. Cheryl's another one. Cheryl's holding... Is that a hunting rifle or a lever action? Hunting rifle. Give her that. Support Ash is carrying a shovel, which makes a lot of sense given the fact that he buries Linda. He uses the shovel more in Evil Dead 1 than he does in Evil Dead 2. That could have been a basic prestige reward. Now, the main problem that you have is the stat changes that they received were relatively insignificant. Now, part of that is they don't want to unbalance the game. Okay, so how do we fix this? First off, you could have created a system of a permanent prestige upgrade. The way it would work is, if you, one thing I would have liked to have seen is maybe each level of prestige you get enables you to start each match with 1 pink F point in a category. Maybe you couldn't choose the category, maybe it would be random, doesn't matter. Each prestige level giving you an extra pink F point in this prestige screen. So you start the game, if you're prestige 5, you start the game with 5 pink F points. That to me gives you more of a tangible gameplay benefit. You could have made it to where each of the skills on the side of the screen gets their own upgrade at each level. And you could have done it in sequential order. So your first passive right here would be your level 2 in my opinion. I would have made the power your level 1. You could make this level 1, the level 2 prestige, the level 3 prestige, the level 4 prestige, and then at level 5 you could have given something unique to the character. So you could have buffed little by little, if they want to go for the system of buffing your damage up overall. And to me, that would make more sense given the fact the way the demon tree is. The warlord and the puppeteer both receive nothing besides a minor buff. You look 5% bonus damage, 5% bonus health on Really Bad Influence. Now Really Bad Influence 1 is pretty good, but all they did is make you slightly better. You go from 55% damage to 60% damage. You know, you go from 115% or 125% health to 140% health. Well, it'd be 130% health, sorry. Math is wrong. Then when you go to Really Bad Influence 3, it's again another 5% to both categories from what you previously had. This is not a strong enough buff. I said in a previous video, they could have done something custom, like where they put different status conditions in it, right? They could have put a poison status condition on a survivor with Really Bad Influence 3, where if a unit hits a heavy attack, if an AI unit hits a heavy attack on you, or they have the basic units have the mechanic where they can rip their arm off and beat you with it. If they hit you with their arm as a melee weapon, it applies a poison condition, where you take damage over time until you either pop a Shemps, pop an amulet, or reduce your fear. That could have been something unique. That could have been something custom. Puppeteer. Puppeteer could have received something, and the killer tree, in my opinion, could have used something a bit better. Like they could have used, you could have added maybe an extra 1 or 2 slots onto their tree instead. Like Puppeteer is like electric, lightning-based type person. You could have had something called Electric Reload, where if survivors are on your, when survivors are on your demon, in the radius of your demon vision, you get a notification whenever they reload their gun. That's a spitball. Is it a good idea? No. But it's certainly better than a 5 and a 3% buff. Plus an extra skill point that you don't get until you fully leveled the character all the way up again. Now, I have been saying that the demon, when I wanted a prestige system, the demon did need extra points. They needed like an extra 5 skill points, and I'm glad I got it. But those skill points, they make you work way too hard for it. Same thing on the survivor side, although I think it's a bit worse on the demon side because the demon needs the points more than the survivor does. So, how do you rework your prestige? You put some of these points together. You could have made it to where at prestige 1, you receive no upgrade to your ability, but you get your 5 skill points up front. And then each one of your prestiges after that is where you would get an upgrade to your ability. Or you could do it the reverse, where prestige 5 is where you get your 5 extra skill points. Because if they keep the changes relatively minimal, then they could have, you know, at prestige 5, you could have forced survivors, if they just wanted the skill points, to grind all the way up to that. Same thing on the survivor side. Because on the survivor side, when this update was announced, I was sitting here plotting out how I would put my points in. Like, okay, I said to myself, I got 5 extra points, I put up 1 point into stopping power, 4 points into hollow points. And this build will be pretty good, right? You know, and now I go down to Warrior Ash, and I said, okay, well there's a couple of routes I could go with this for putting my points in You know, I could put like 3 points into fighting shape and 1 or 2 points into something else. I could put a point into Sunning Strikes and then 3 points into One-Handed Weapon Master, and then I'd have a spare point I could throw into something else. I started spitballing ideas. Now I don't care. I don't care about the extra skill point at all because of how long it's going to take me to grind that out. And again, these changes are relatively minimal at best. Some of these changes are relatively significant. I think the first character I would prestige would be Scotty, because I really want those, the 2 buffs on Scotty there, particularly the collateral damage at 1. But I don't necessarily think I would go up to prestige 5 on any character. I would try and get everybody up to 1 and then leave them, because the buff to most of these powers is insignificant. And some characters had awful powers. Leader Ash's power is awful. And at Prestige 5, they've done nothing to fix it. They shave 5 seconds off the cooldown, that's not the problem. They up the balance bar damage, that's not the problem. Well, I mean, it's kind of the problem. I don't know if that balance bar buff is going to be enough to fix the issue I had with it where it doesn't, like, one-shot. You know, Cheryl's another great example. Her ability was good, and it got nerfed into the ground and was absolutely horrible after that first patch. What did they do? They took 10 seconds off the cooldown. They didn't do anything to fix how the ability worked, and they made it overall, there's like nothing happened. The 10-second cooldown is nothing. It's not like, wow, if I really had those 10 seconds, you know. I think I've had 1 game of Cheryl in my entire playtime where I said, wow, if only my ability was off of cooldown, we could have clutched that game out. And the lack of real balance changes that came out, Pablo got a little bit of a buff the last patch, Blacksmith got a nerf this patch, understandably so, David got a nerf this patch, understandably so. The Blacksmith one I think is fine. The David one was a bit, it went the wrong angle. You know, Henry got a nerf that probably was needed. Arthur got a rework that was probably needed. But, I don't know. I think the community should do a little bit of a better job coming up with ideas for fixing the Prestige system. Saber does have a public forum up specifically for ideas on the Prestige system. But what I would recommend, I would not recommend that you spend your spirit points as a survivor or a demon player on the Prestige system, because I get the feeling that they're going to have so much backlashes. I haven't found a single person that likes how the Prestige system is handled. I think there's going to be so much backlash that they're going to be making a change. I hope it comes before the end of the month. I don't know. But I get the feeling that all those survivors out there and killer mains that dropped all of your blood points into max prestiging the character is going to be wasted if they go and change, if they go and drop the grind on it. And I don't know if you're going to get it back. So